Okay, so already you touched on a company like TVC Communications, and now I'm looking at what do a company like this rely on in times like this when revenue, when ad spend is on the low side.
Yeah, well, what you do in times like this, I think we spoke about it before, in terms of managing we reach out first and foremost to all our clients, and we let them know we're here for them. We emphasize the fact that we've got large audiences, particularly large audience at this point in time. We offer them flexibility. They require flexibility in these times when people are working from home. It's very hard to get work done. So we have found ourselves actually doing an awful lot more in terms of fulfilling the marketing role than oftentimes we would. We've had a client recently who is South African. A lot of their production facilities and their design services are in Johannesburg. They haven't been able, with the lockdown, to fill any of those. So we've taken those services in-house for them. So wherever we can, Tolu, we're helping media agencies, our clients directly to, I suppose, fulfill whatever briefs they have currently. The other big area, and you've been across this yourself, is the response to COVID-19 in Lagos has relied an awful lot on big private investors helping. We've seen mobile companies, we've seen big food companies, we've seen banks all come together and create this massive fund to help the federal government, and also to help the Lagos government to fulfill what they need to in terms of easing the pressure on people. Now, it's important that everybody understands what these companies are trying to do. Then they create advertising messages around COVID-19, and our role as media partners is to make sure those messages get through to the right people, and we do that with advertising, or we do it through corporate communications on our news or on our business programs, and that's where a lot of our effort has gone in the last number of weeks.
You put up an article lately talking about this, doing an overview of what you should expect post COVID-19, talking about GDP of countries and all of that. Can you take us through what that message, what you're really trying to put out today?
Yeah, I can. But it's really, I suppose, look, this has been a global crisis. It's been a generational crisis. And now that we're a couple of months into it, everybody is taking stock, no matter what sector you're in, no matter what industry you're in, everybody is taking stock. And by that I mean they're reviewing what's gone on in the past, how could things have happened better, etc. It has been my opinion and my view as a European, but yet as somebody who's worked in this market for 3 years, I've never really felt that the advertising industry is fulfilling anything like its real potential in this market. And what I'm advocating when people ask me my views and what's going to happen post COVID-19, and not only COVID-19, we're also in the midst of a huge oil shock in terms of the price of oil, for many reasons. First, it started out with the trade war between Saudi Arabia and Russia, and that has now been exasperated simply because the demand for oil has fallen through the floor with COVID-19. So with these two massive shocks, it's a time now to take stock and say, how do we come out of this? And I suppose people have been asking my view as an outsider and a European, and I have presented them with what I believe is a 5-step plan for making the advertising industry in this market more relevant and putting it on a path to growth.
Can we touch on one or two of them as we round up?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe, very simply, I believe first and foremost, this industry is full of disparate bodies and disparate parts, all looking after individual stakeholders. I believe there needs to be a coming together of all the major stakeholders in this industry to set up an advocacy group for the advertising industry and to put together a strategic advertising plan for Nigeria with a clear roadmap. Secondly, there's no point in us having a roadmap unless we have a target. I believe we need to set a clear target for the size of the ad market we want. We sometimes fool ourselves that Nigeria is the biggest market in Africa, it's the biggest economy in Africa, South Africa lags behind it. In terms of the advertising sector, the market here is 450 million a year. That's 0.1% of GDP. South Africa's 2.6 billion. It's 6 times the size of here. So I believe the ad market underperforms here, and I think it should be contributing a lot more to GDP than it currently is. I think a more realistic number is the ad market here should be $1 billion per year in size. Now, we're not going to do this as an advocacy group on our own. I think the third thing we need to do is engage the ministers, the ministries, the federal agencies, and we need them to buy into the relevance of the advertising sector. And the only way we can do that is if we present a clear rationale as to why they should embrace advertising as a sector and why they should help fund the kickstart of the sector. There's been an interesting body of work done by Deloitte in Europe, and it talks really about the relevance and the power of advertising in Europe. And one of the key outtakes of that body of work was that for every euro spent on advertising in Europe, Deloitte found that it contributed 7 euros to the economy. So imagine this $1 billion fund that I talk about, that this market I believe should be its size. That could translate into a contribution to the Nigerian economy of $7 billion per year. I believe if you can present that case to the ministers and federal agencies, now they're on board. And why I want them on board is to create, fourthly, an advertising fund, a fund that kickstarts this advocacy group, this roadmap, and that fund would be used to invest in training, acquiring and getting and encouraging new people to come into the industry, and in technology. These are the biggest areas, the biggest challenges we currently have in the sector, and this is what's holding the sector back. The media and advertising industry relies on people. People are its assets. We're not investing in it. We're not investing in technology, in research, in ad programming, etc. And if we're not doing that, we can't expect to grow. It needs state help and say, but we can't just put a begging bowl out there. We need to put a clear plan in place based on research in other markets, and we need to do research in this market. And finally, I believe at the end of this roadmap, if we get all the shareholders together, if we get ministers and government on board, etc., I'm talking about global. If we are the biggest economy in Africa, well then why then can we not be leaders in Africa in advertising, marketing and entertainment? And to do that, we need to be global. We need to have a Nigeria first view on everything. I absolutely contend that's the right thing to do, but we need to match that with the best that international has to offer. And to attract the best international firms, well then we have to give them tax incentives, we have to create tax-free zones, we have to allow 100% of the profits to be kept, we'll have to allow 100% ownership, all the things that you might see in an advertising or a media city in Dubai. But I believe if we have that vision, I believe if we have that coming together, and that clear roadmap, that I fully feel that's where the Nigerian advertising market could be, and it needs to go there if it wants to have relevance and it wants to grow. Otherwise, we have seen 4, 5, 6 consecutive years of decline. This is going to be another year of decline, and before we know where we are looking at a very sorry state for the ad sector in Nigeria.
What's a general message to your clients, to advertisers generally?
My message is always one of optimism. I'm a huge believer in advertising. It is an incredible industry, a global industry. It's dynamic, it's innovative. We've got new media, we've got traditional media. As somebody who sells television and radio, I mean, what we've seen in COVID-19 is that audiences have grown. We've got 10 million viewers and listeners every day. If you want to get a message out there, you want to get out there quickly, cost effectively, TV and radio remains the opportunity to do that.
Thank you very much, Ronan Redmond, for your time.
Thank you, Tolu. Thank you.